Good morning. Welcome to episode 17 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. How crazy is it that we're at episode 17 already? It's nuts. Yeah, I hope you guys are having a good Monday. It is Family Day here in Canada. And what is it? President's Day in the States today as well. So there's some early NHL games on today. Pretty exciting. I often forget Family Day is a thing because I'm from the Northwest Territories, and we have what is now called Indigenous Peoples Day as our stat holiday. It's every June like 20th or something like that, and they don't do that here, and they got Family Day instead, whereas we didn't have Family Day up north. So yeah, it still takes a bit of getting used to. So yeah, I got some tragic story to share with everybody here. So yesterday, Sunday, my team in the city had a nice and early 5:15 game. And on top of that, my fiance had to go to the city for an appointment too. So we were going to go together, and we did go together, but hear me out. Get some groceries while we're there, go to my hockey game, she'll watch my hockey game, we head home, go home and have sushi, right? Well, that was the plan. And then, I don't know where this came from at all. No idea, out of the blue. So I get up, it's like 5:45, right? I make my breakfast, I feel fine, I have my coffee, feel fine. My fiance gets up, I make her some pancakes because it was her birthday. And while I'm cooking pancakes, just out of nowhere, I didn't make a movement or anything. My neck just started just killing me every time I turned it. And it was I didn't make any sudden movement or anything that caused this. It was just out of nowhere. It's crazy. I'm in my 30s now, and I stretch pretty much every day. And a big part of my morning stretch is focusing on my neck, right? It's such an important part of your body. And my neck was just killing me. So I kept an eye on it. And as we get closer to game time, as we get closer to driving to the city, zero improvement. So I told one of our other team reps, man, this would have been the perfect time to go to a hockey game, but my neck, I'm going to hurt myself if I go. So he handled everything. Very appreciative of that. And I still went to the city with my lady, and we still did our chores and stuff. I just didn't go to my game. And I'm very happy to say my guys got the job done. They pulled off a 6-1 win against a team that's ahead of us in the standings as well. So that's definitely a big win. Good game for our goalie as well. It's just, yeah, very happy for those guys. I think if we lost and I couldn't make it, I would be like, oh man, if I was there. I know I'm not a good player, but I could play a part in hopefully getting the guys going, right? So I'm really glad they won. And especially, I don't think I'll make the next few games either. So we're getting closer to playoffs, and I'm making a lot less games here. So anyways, almost how much does it suck to drive when your neck hurts? You have to shoulder check, right? And it hurt every time I shoulder check. When I'm pulling out of a parking spot, when I'm reversing out of a parking spot, my neck would hurt. It was just, it was brutal. But we had a good day out of it, so there you go. Okay, so got some things to talk about today on the podcast. Not much for current events, but there is a little bit of history I want to get into. So it's gonna be one of those more history heavy podcasts, but those are my favorite episodes to do. So hopefully you enjoy it. I think I'm covering a topic that I don't think any podcast has covered before. So I really do think you'll enjoy today's episode. I've got a fantasy pick to wrap things up as well. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, gonna start off with a bit of current events here. So a few episodes ago, I took the TSN trade bait board or whatever that had the top 10 trade bait players, I guess. The top 10 players that are expected to get traded at this trade deadline. And I've already been wrong about one of them, Ryan O'Reilly going to the Leafs. I think that's a great pickup for them. But another player is actually off the board, and that is Jonathan Toews. So it came out, I believe, yesterday. Jonathan Toews, he's been experiencing some health issues. It was kind of undisclosed for a while, but it came out that he's experiencing some pretty harsh symptoms related to long COVID. And like I don't think I know anyone that's gone through long COVID, but I heard it really sucks. I had COVID last year, and I would say I had a pretty average COVID experience, and even that sucked. So I couldn't imagine going through long COVID here. So, all the best to Jonathan Toews. This is a player that I've definitely grown to respect. And don't get me wrong, the only reason why I wasn't a big fan of him in the Blackhawks is because I'm a Sharks fan. And the Blackhawks ruined our hopes and dreams in the early 2010s on a few occasions. So, yeah, I really didn't like this team when they were winning all these cups. I still got some PTSD from, whenever I hear Chelsea Dagger. It's just like, oh man, but... I mean, for real though, how good of a goal song is that? Because it's just so obnoxious, but that's kind of what you want out of a goal song, right? Like, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but like, you look at Toronto's goal song, and I don't like it. I'm sure there's Leafs fans that absolutely love it, but I don't know. It doesn't, it's missing something, There's one goal song, I don't think they use it anymore, but it might have been last season. The Florida Panthers use one of my all-time favorite songs as their goal song, and that's Sweetness by Jimmy Eat World. I love that song so much. And they like play the chorus whenever they scored a goal, but like it sounds like it'd be such a good goal song, and then you hear it and it's like, I don't know, maybe the PA announcer guy, the DJ, maybe he doesn't play it loud enough. I don't know, but I was just like, man, I thought that would hit harder, Anyways, I should do an episode on that. I should just kind of critique teams' goal songs. But anyways, Jonathan Toews, this is a player I've definitely grown to respect over the years. Easy first ballot Hall of Famer. 3 cups, Conn Smythe, multiple gold medals with Canada. Just what a guy, really. So I hope he gets better. I really hope this isn't like career threatening for him, but it did come out that he will not be getting traded from the Chicago Blackhawks at the trade deadline, which I think that's the right move, right? Because obviously you don't know what shape he's in. I mean, he's got a full no move, so I mean, it's Jonathan Toews' call. I think he has a full no move. I don't really feel like looking that up, but you got to think a guy who wins you 3 Stanley Cups, when his contract comes up, you think he would request a full no move. So I'm going to assume that he does have a full no movement clause. But I really hope he makes a full recovery here. I hope this doesn't have an impact on his career in the long run. And I just wanted to bring that up. So another player from that trade bait board who is now off the board, which means I am 0 for 2 so far, I guess, and we'll see closer to the trade deadline how things go. Okay, let's get into the main part I want to talk about, the main thing I want to talk about today. And no, I won't be spending all episode talking about this guy, but I think Ray Bourque's career really brings up some interesting points about the trade deadline and about veterans going to teams to win their first cup. So let's talk about Ray Bourque, arguably the greatest defenseman of all time. I mean, that's a very tough question to answer because you look at Bobby Orr, right? And he won, 3 Hart trophies in a row or something crazy. Like 7 Norrises. Like, he was so dominant offensively during the 70s, Bobby Orr. But he had a very short career, unfortunately, due to injury. And that sample size really makes it tough to compare who is the greatest at a given position. Like, when we look at the greatest goalies of all time, the main names that come up are Waugh, Hasek, Broder, in whatever order. But then every so often, you'll hear someone mention Ken Dryden, who definitely deserves to be in that conversation. But due to a fairly short career, it's really tough to compare his success. And then you can also be like, well, he was on a really good team, and then it's like, well, Patrick Waugh and Broder were on very good teams too. Hasek was on an incredibly stacked Detroit Red Wings team when he won his cup. More on them later, actually. So it's really tough to compare guys at certain positions. But to me, Ray Bourque is the greatest defenseman of all time. But there's a good argument for Bobby Orr. People will put Lindstrom in that conversation too. I think statistically, that's another tough one to compare. I love Lindstrom though. And of our generation, we'll see how some of these guys like Cale Makar and Hedman, how their careers end up going. But of my generation, Lindstrom is definitely the best. But and you could even throw Paul Coffey in that conversation when you're looking at offense, because when you're comparing the greatest player at a certain position, how are we measuring this? So I feel like we default to the offense. That's what we do with Bobby Orr and Ray Bourque. I'll have his stats up on the next slide in a sec here. So anyways, yeah, to me, Ray Bourque, if he's not the greatest defenseman of all time, he's in that conversation for sure, easily. He's got 1,518 games played. Oh, sorry, that's just with Boston. He played 16 something in his career because he spent 2 years in Colorado, which is kind of the main point of this section. But yeah, I think he's 11th all time in games played. That'll be on the next slide too, actually. Oh no, I can see it on my little side screen here. 1,612 games played in his career, which I believe is 11th all time. And he's actually 13th all time in points with 1,570. So yeah, and he is the greatest scoring defenseman of all time too. And a lot of that has to do with longevity, but man, over 1,600 games played, and he was just under a point per game average throughout his career. Crazy. So the big thing that at least people my age remember with Ray Bourque, because most of Ray Bourque's career was, the vast majority of his career was outside of my window of watching hockey. Even when he won his cup in Colorado, I was only 9, right? I was watching hockey by then, and I remember the Stanley Cup Finals that year, but not too much, right? I was still a kid. I was probably playing with Lego or whatever, right? The game would be on, and I'm watching YTVs. But the main thing with Ray Bourque though is he has a very long career in Boston. They just can't get over that hump. They just can't win in the playoffs. I think they might have made a cup final or two, but yeah, just couldn't get it done. So he gets traded to Colorado in 2000. It might have still been 99 actually, but it was the 99-2000 season. And in his second season with Colorado, he wins the cup finally. And on that note, he retires. Wins the cup and then retires. And it's a beautiful story. It's a story that we still talk about to this day. And it's something that gets mentioned every time we see a veteran get traded to a cup contending team. A veteran that has not won a cup yet, oftentimes. Will they be the next Ray Bourque? Will they be in that same conversation? Because obviously only one team every season can win the cup. So we see so many instances where a veteran will get traded to a team and then it doesn't happen, okay? This is definitely more the exception than the rule when it comes to guys getting traded and then winning the cup. Veterans getting traded and then winning the cup. So that is going to be the main point of today's video, and I'm very excited to talk about this. Let's take a look at Ray Bourque's stats. Oh, of course they got caught off. They got cut off in the frame here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to fix this. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I could not leave the career stats cut off, definitely, because those are so impressive. I have to show them up. 400 goals too. It's crazy. So yeah, this is Ray Bourque's career from Hockey Reference, and big shout out to Hockey Reference. They helped me out a lot in making this video, as you'll see later on. But yeah, just an insane career. I mean, he was so healthy throughout his career too, for the most part. especially later on, 80 games with Colorado in that last season too. How many Norris trophies has he got there? 5, and then nominated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other times. So 5 Norrises. So he was nominated for the Norris essentially 15 times in his career. Just insane. Runner-up for the Hart Trophy as well in 89-90. Very, very impressive there. Calder Trophy winner. And of course, famously Stanley Cup champion at the age of 40. Just what a story. Tons of first All-Star teams in there too, second All-Star teams. Did he ever win the Bing? Oh, he won the King Clancy too. I totally missed that. So there you go. Just insane stats by a defenseman. He never hit the 100-point mark like Bob Orr did. And I'm sure Coffey did at least once. But tons of 90-point seasons too. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then even more 80-point seasons too. So just super impressive career. I wanted to make sure I got that up there. Just insane. Do we even have blocks up there? No, we don't. And it's like, and he's up there for all-time plus minus too. I made sure I looked at that beforehand. And like, how spoiled on the back end have the Boston Bruins been throughout history, right? Like Bobby Orr, and then you can see as Bobby Orr, as his career wraps up, Ray Bourque comes in, and then some number of years later, Chara, and now they've got guys like McAvoy. Like it's just the Boston Bruins. They have filled that number one defenseman position so well in their history. I mean, the two arguably greatest defensemen of all time, Orr and Bourque, both members of the Boston Bruins for the vast majority of their career. We'll obviously have to see how McAvoy's career wraps up here. Not wraps up, but how it goes. I think the tough thing with McAvoy, though, is when it comes to things like the Norris Trophy, and I've said this on the podcast before, too, but there's just so many good defensemen right now. Like, it feels like every year, at least recently, the Norris Trophy, it's a bit of a toss-up because it's like Cale Makar, he's kind of on pace to be one of the best defensemen of all time. Hedman, Yossi, Fox, and then, as I mentioned, McAvoy, like it's... And I'm leaving guys out. Look at Carlson this season. It's insane. So, but anyways, Ray Bourque, very, very impressive career. I definitely wanted to get his stats up there. They only recorded average ice time. They only kept track of it in the last 5 seasons of his career. But look at that. I mean, he averaged 27 and a half minutes in those final 5 seasons. Like, sorry, I skipped over. It's just 3. I forgot Hockey Reference does that whole total stat, which is useful. I looked over it. So, sorry, his last 3 seasons of his career, they started tracking average time on ice. And in his, when he was 38, 39, 40, he's averaging 27 and a half minutes. Insane. Just so impressive. One of the most remarkable careers of all time, and just the fact that he just wraps it up with a Stanley Cup at the age of 40, very impressive. Okay, here's the reason why I brought him up. I wanted to look at how many times in history has an NHL team pulled a Bourque, as I call it. So pretty much what this means is teams that brought in a veteran and then won the cup with that veteran. And I put some conditions here because, I wanted to make it a bit more specific to Bourque's situation. And I had to make some cutoffs as well. So what I'm going to be looking at is cup champion teams since Ray Bourque did it. So I'm going to say I went 2002 onwards. I actually didn't look at other veterans from 2001, unfortunately. I kind of wish I did. Maybe I'll take a peek after the podcast here just to see if I left anyone out by accident. Actually, I'm gonna pause really quick because I have a feeling about one player here. So the player I was thinking of actually just qualified for this list based on the criteria I have up there. Rob Blake getting traded, or maybe he signed with Colorado before this cup. yeah, 805 games with the Kings, and then goes to Colorado and wins a cup. So okay, shout out to Rob Blake. He's not going to be featured in this, but since I didn't do any other players from that 2001 cup, yeah, and there might be other guys too. It's just, yeah, Rob Blake was the first one. I was like, oh, I should mention him. Okay, so here's my rule for this list. This is for players who played at least 800 games before arriving to the team they won the cup with. They must be in either their first or second season with that team. So this could be a trade deadline guy. This could be a guy that signed in the offseason. This could be a guy who had a bit of term and then won it in the second season with that team. So I made a cutoff there. And the final rule being they could not have won a Stanley Cup beforehand. So you look at guys like, did Ron Francis do it? Is he one of the... Oh, maybe not, because he didn't win with the Canes in 2002. Mark Recchi, I think he's one of the guys that you won't see here. So there are some guys who they go to a team late in their career, but they've already won the cup, so I'm not going to qualify them for this list. And I did make a rule as well for goalies. I felt 400 games played would be an okay cutoff. But here's the thing. There's only one goalie that made this list from that, so not really a big deal there. There were quite a few players who just missed this criteria. So if there's a guy that stands out to you, and before you write an angry comment in the comment section, maybe look it up first and just double check. There were some guys in like the high 700s who didn't quite make the list. Okay, and I did make 2 exceptions. No, I made 1 exception on this list too, and you'll see why. It makes good sense. So yeah. And you might want to take a guess right now of how many times teams have done this in history between 2002 and now. And the number is it's bigger than I expected. I texted a buddy of mine yesterday just to get his guess, and he said it's probably only happened like 6 times since 2002. And it's actually quite a bit more than that. And for the record, that would have been my guess too. It would have been like probably 6 or 7. But no, you'll see it's actually quite a few players. But I think that's because we focus so much on guys like Joe Thornton and guys like Patrick Marleau, who like they go to the Leafs and then it doesn't happen. You know, we think so much about the guys that this doesn't happen to, and we kind of forget about the guys it does work out with. So let's get started. And obviously the years where this doesn't happen, I'm not going to really touch on them at all. But in 2002, we actually had one of the few years where there was 3 players who won their first cup after arriving to the team. So Luc Robitaille, he might be the guy on this list with the most games played, other than Bourque, of course, with 1,124 games played prior to arriving to the Detroit Red Wings, on what was maybe the most stacked team of all time. Seriously, look at the 2002 Detroit Red Wings. They were stacked like 10 or 11 Hall of Famers and Datsuk. Like, it's just Datsuk hasn't qualified for the Hall of Fame because he's still playing in the KHL, I think. And yeah, just the most stacked team of all time. You had like Brett Hall on this team, Hasek, just nuts. And there's Hasek as well. He was one of the exceptions for this. Well, not exceptions, but he was the only goalie to make the cut. Just over 500 games played prior to arriving to Detroit. And yeah, just a remarkable career. It would have been a complete shame if Hasek went on to not win a cup in his career. And he did, and he won as a backup as well in 2008. So yeah, shout out to one of the best goalies of all time. So great to see him lift the cup on such a stacked team. Oh my goodness. This team was just like a straight up all-star team. It was just nuts. And then the salary cap happened, and I don't know if we see anything like this again, but I don't know. With cap circumvention, who knows, right? And then Fredrik Olofsson as well. 900 games played. I don't know too much about his career, but he did qualify for this list, so shout out to him. Okay. The 2003 Devils, there was no one, and here is my honorable mention exception, because it would be a complete insult to this player if I did not mention him, just given how many games played. So Dave Anderchuk, he was captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning when he won the Stanley Cup with them in 2004. And he just misses out on this criteria because this was in his third season with Tampa. But I had to mention him because he played 1,361 games before arriving to Tampa. There's no way I could make this list without mentioning this Hall of Famer. Just, yeah, I had to put him in. So this is the only time in the list where I broke the rule. There's one later on where I kind of broke it, but not really. But yeah, shout out to Dave Anderchuk. I was very happy for Tampa when they won this cup. And there's a lot of guys where this would end up being their only cup, like St. Louis, like Dan Boyle, like Le Cavalier. So I think, at least, I don't think any of those guys won another cup. But yeah, this was a big cup championship for the Lightning, and their first of 3 in their franchise. Carolina Hurricanes had one pretty well-known name too, Doug Weight, winning his first and I believe only Stanley Cup in Carolina after 959 games played. There was a lot of guys on that team, a lot of vets on that team, but quite a few of them didn't actually make this criteria. It was just Weight. I was kind of surprised. I thought there would be at least 3 guys from Carolina who would make this list, but nope, just the one. But again, another historic cup win for that franchise. I was a big fan of Cam Ward throughout his career. He's actually one of the few NHL players I've ever met. Actually, he coached me at Sylvan Lake Goalie School the year before he won the cup with Carolina. He was actually just coming out of juniors, so that was kind of cool meeting a guy right before he met the cup, less than a calendar year before he won the cup. And yeah, Cam Ward's such a nice guy. I was really glad I got to meet him. Not the best coach, but he was really young, so he'll get a pass. I remember he ran like the shootout drill, and he was just kind of like, don't make the first move, and But shout out to Cam Ward. Shout out to Doug Weight as well. Yeah, great career. Okay, the Anaheim Ducks. Here is my other. It's not an exception. It depends how you define my criteria. I had to mention Teemu Selanne though. I mean, come on, like. I think one of the most beloved players of all time. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I had to put him in this list. So, technically, he played 959 games before arriving to Anaheim again. Okay, so this is after his second stint. His time in Anaheim, the first time around, is included in that 959 games played. But technically, he was in his first or second season back in Anaheim when he won this cup. So I wanted to mention him because, yeah, I love Teemu Selanne. Brad May got his first cup with Anaheim as well, and a player who I didn't think he was going to make the cut, and then I did the math. This took me about an hour to make these slides here. There's quite a bit of math I had to do on my graphing calculator here, but Chris Pronger just made the cut. I didn't think he was going to make it, but he did. He arrived to Anaheim, I believe, this season, the season they won. After making it to the Cup Finals with Edmonton in the previous year. And he just makes the cut with 802 games played, and he won his first and I believe his only cup in his career. There we go. Detroit Red Wings again, 2008. Dallas Drake, 944 games played before winning the cup. They beat the Penguins, I think, in 7. Might have been 6. I think it was 7 this year, though. So, yeah, kudos to him. A player that was very overdue for a cup, in my opinion, because he was just a very underrated player in his day. Lots of time in Buffalo. I think he played some time in Long Island. I can't quite remember. But Miroslav Satan, Satan, whatever you want to call him. Definitely a big underrated player from my childhood. 947 games played before arriving to the Pens, and he won the cup with the Penguins. And he's another one of those players where I think it would have been a shame if he didn't win a Stanley Cup before he retired. You can say that about a lot of guys on this list, but I feel like Satan, I don't know, I've always liked this guy. Good representative of his country, Slovakia. I'm pretty sure he's Slovakian at least. But yeah, very, very happy he won that cup. Despite how much I disliked the Pens. I didn't hate them too much during this cup run. It was when they started to beat when they beat the Sharks, and okay. 2010 Chicago, there actually wasn't anybody. I was surprised by that too. I thought there'd be at least one guy, but nope. Just didn't quite meet the criteria, I guess. But Leafs fans, you guys can cover your ears because in 2011, Thomas Kaberle won his first Stanley Cup, maybe his only Stanley Cup, with the Boston Bruins. Yeah, so kind of a weird arc going from the Leafs to the Bruins and then winning with the Bruins. This is another team where I was kind of surprised there wasn't more, but there was at least a few players I think who won a cup previously on this team too. So 878 games for Kaberle before arriving in Boston. Shout out to him. Another guy that was definitely due. Nobody from the 2012 Kings, but hold that thought. Next slide, you'll see there is one player from the 2014 Kings, but we'll talk about the Blackhawks first. The 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, there was two players. Jamal Mayers with 815 games played, and Michael Handzus with 939 games played prior to winning the Cup with Chicago. So good for them. There we go. 2014, Robin Regehr. He wins his first and I believe his only Cup with the LA Kings. 931 games prior to arriving in LA. And this is one of those players you might be wondering why they aren't on the list. I wanted to mention Gaborik because he actually just missed the Cup. I'm sorry, missed the cut. The Cup, yeah. Well, he did miss the Cup. Oh, no, he won the Cup. What am I talking? Okay, Gaborik was on this roster, but he just missed the 800 games mark prior to arriving to LA. 791, but who cares? He won a Cup. Congrats to him. And congrats to Robin Regehr, a veteran in the league, winning his first Stanley Cup. Okay, 2015, Chicago Blackhawks, there was two. Kimmo Timonen, over 1,000 games played, 1,092 before arriving to Chicago. And look at that picture, that top picture there. That's Kimmo Timonen. What a shot! Just so happy to be winning the Stanley Cup. That is the face of a veteran who's waited a long time to win a cup, and he did it. So congrats to him. Antoine Vermette as well, 815 games played prior to arriving to Chicago. And yeah, good for him. And it's nice seeing those guys, especially the ones with over 1,000 games, finally winning the Cup. And you'll see there's at least one more player that's gonna show up on this list too. Nobody from the 2016 Penguins, but one player from the 2017 Penguins, and that is Ron Hainsey. 891 games played prior. I thought Kessel would qualify for this, but he didn't. Kessel, obviously a long time, he spent quite a bit of years on, or many years, I should say, on the Toronto Maple Leafs and a bit of time in Boston, but he didn't actually make the 800 game mark prior to arriving to Pittsburgh. But yeah, Ron Hainsey did. Congrats to him, winning the Cup with the Penguins. And that brings us to our last team, because believe it or not, nobody from the 2018 Washington Capitals, the 2019 St. Louis Blues, the 2020 or the 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning, we actually didn't see a veteran meet this criteria until the most recent Stanley Cup. The 2022 Colorado Avalanche. There was actually two players who made this criteria. And of course, I would say famously Eric Johnson as well, who, longtime Colorado Avalanche, finally winning the Cup. But obviously he'd been with the Avs for a long time. But a different Johnson did meet this criteria. That was Jack Johnson. 950 games played prior to arriving to Colorado. This is a guy that's had a tough career, just ups and downs and family issues and financial issues. And, he's had a tough time. So it's good to see him win a cup with Colorado and check that off his list too. I think a lot of people were happy to see Jack Johnson win a cup because this is a player that got dunked on for his production for some number of years until the stuff about his parents came out and the financial just scumbaggery his parents were having on him. Like, nobody should be treated like that by his parents. And I think after that came out, a lot of people became Jack Johnson fans, and came from a place of empathy for him. And I think that's great. I really like seeing that in the sport, where fans become a bit more understanding of a guy's situation and then start to root for him. And I wasn't really rooting for Colorado, but I will admit, when Jack Johnson lifted the cup, this past June, I was very happy for him. I was. I got to adjust myself in my chair here because my neck is just killing me. I was leaning forward for the last half an hour. So congrats to Jack Johnson. Honestly, a tough career, but I'm very happy he got to have that experience. And a player who actually is one of the guys with the most games played before arriving to the team where he won his first cup, and that's Andrew Cogliano. He was a Shark right before he got traded to Colorado too. So I was definitely rooting for Cogs. Like, how do you not like this guy? I know he was a Duck for a long time, but so he was a bit of a villain. But he came to San Jose. I'm rooting for him. And no, he was not on that 2007 Stanley Cup roster with the Ducks. Actually, I'm really curious. I'm just going to look up when he arrived to the Ducks exactly. I think he was drafted by them too. Okay, so I wasn't even close. He was his career started in Edmonton, and I totally forgot he was there for a while. And then he didn't arrive in Anaheim till like 2011 or 2012 or something like. Okay, so I was way off, but Andrew Cogliano, yeah, he made the Cup Finals there with Dallas as well. So it's nice to see him. He had a taste of the Cup Finals, and then with Colorado, he got over the hump. And I heard he was a big part of the leadership core there during the Avalanche's run. He was apparently a very good locker room guy for this team. Speeches, giving the team the encouragement that maybe was one of the bigger parts of getting them over that hump. I mean, you need those guys who have been there, done that, and can provide a lot of insight. And you can say that about any of the players on this list, because a lot of these guys made the Cup Finals before and just couldn't get it done. And, they want to share their experience of what it's like to lose. You might have noticed Marian Hossa is not on this list either. He just didn't make the cut either. I think he had 600 or 700 games played before arriving to Chicago in 2010. But he's a good example of, he probably really shared a lot of his insight with that 2010 Chicago Blackhawks team. Hey, I was just in the finals with, the Penguins in 2008 and we lost. I was there with Detroit in 2009 and we lost. And I know for most of the Detroit team, they just won a Stanley Cup. But I think especially from Hossa's experience in Pittsburgh, he could really share with that fairly young Chicago team and be like, hey, losing sucks. I mean, Chicago lost, I think, in the West Finals the year before they won their first. So they're first with that core, that is. So anyways, Cogliano, I'm sure he was a very important part of that Colorado team. Very happy to see Cogs win a cup. Very happy to see a lot of these guys win a cup. Very positive episode today, guys. Lots of positivity. I feel like I've been a bit negative on this podcast lately, so I'm glad I could talk about some guys having success. And, there's so much negativity in hockey and hockey YouTube, hockey podcasts. I think it's important to be talking about those good stories. I like talking about them, and I definitely enjoy talking about the good stories more than the bad ones. So anyways, one bad story I want to mention is my fantasy picks, because oh boy. So I got to clear something up. Last episode, I talked about Ottawa's schedule this week. I realized this morning I was looking at the current week. So the one that we just went through as I'm recording this on Monday. Ottawa does play this Saturday. They've got 3 games this week, and they do have some tough opponents. So, you can just forget that. But hey, Matt Sogard, seriously, maybe look into him, because you don't know how long Talbot and Forsberg are going to be out. So, I don't know. Don't regret that pick too much. But this week, did my research, okay? Winnipeg, they've got a good schedule. I think they have 4 games. I went with a defenseman today. I went with Neil Pionk. I always want to call him Poink, but no, that's dumb. So yeah, Neil Pionk, defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah, he's been having an okay season. I know he's only got those 2 points in his last 4 games, as you can see on the screen there, but he's a defenseman. He'll get you hits, he'll get you blocks, he'll get you shots too, plus minus. He's on a pretty good team, so plus minus should be a factor with him. Yeah, I think he's a pretty good player. Not a bad guy to pick up if you got a defenseman slot you're trying to fill. There are some teams this week that only play a couple games, so you might want to keep an eye on your defenseman slot. I already picked up Pionk in one of my leagues, so if any of my fellow league members are listening, sorry, Pionk might be off the table, but I think he's a good pickup this week. We'll see how it goes. I have made my fair share of blunders with fantasy picks lately. Vimelka did not work out. That was a bad one. And Hartman, I don't think Hartman had a good week. I hadn't looked it up, but Neil Pionk, I'm telling you, he's gonna have a good week. I've got a good feeling about him. And yeah, he's my pick for this episode. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I had a lot of fun putting this list together, even though it took a while. But, it is interesting looking at teams who bring in a veteran and then it works out. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen too much these days. But I wonder if we see that with this year's Cup champion. So if you liked the episode, be sure to leave a like. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I would definitely appreciate that if you want more of these. Can't really tell you when the next episode is going to come out, but I'll try to get one before next weekend. We'll see. I know I've definitely been pumping out the episodes lately. It's just I've had some time, so able to work it out. Hopefully my neck gets better and I can play with my rec hockey team in the city soon enough. Miss playing with those guys, and thanks again for listening. And have a good week, by the way. Okay, see ya.